Hello again, it's Matt Renna, and this is Module 6, which is using the VLOOKUP function. VLOOKUP function is used when you're trying to combine sets of data with another set of data. So let me show you an example here. In this data set, you've got ID, name, and date of birth. And in this data set, you have ID and city. What we'd like to do, and this is a very simple form of this, is really import the city into this data set here. So obviously there's only 4 people here. You could do that manually just by matching up the IDs, but imagine this being 1,000 records and trying to import multiple columns from this data set into multiple columns of this data set. So the easiest way to do it is using the VLOOKUP. Okay, the key to the VLOOKUP is making sure that each of the data set has some sort of unique identifier. If it doesn't, you're going to have to create one, which can be some combination of a date of birth and partial name, something like that. But generally speaking, most data sets that I work with in HR have some sort of unique identifier, whether it be a position number or an employee ID number. Tend not to use social securities. So that's the first key. You want to make sure that the key identifier, generally in the fields that I'm working, are in the first leftmost column of each of your data sets. So in this case, that's the case where ID is in the leftmost column of our 2 data sets. Okay, so I'm going to bring the city into this data set, and had I had, let's say, the identifier in a separate column, I can import everything, and I can show you quickly after we run through the simple example of how to do that. So first thing I do is I'm going to name the table, and naming tables is very easy, or data sets, whatever you want to refer them to. So here's a data set that I'm working with, unique identifiers on the left. Okay, so what I like to do is highlight the entire data set. And if you go to the top left over here, which is called the name box, we can name it something. So I'm going to call it data underscore city. I'll hit enter. Okay. Now if you click out of that, once I name a data set, if you hit the drop down right here and click on the name, it'll automatically bring you to and highlight your data set so you know exactly what the data is. And you'll see why this is important in a moment. So let's now write our VLOOKUP formula. So we always start a formula by using equals. So I'm going to hit equals, type in VLOOKUP, open parentheses. Okay, first field in your VLOOKUP is going to be your unique identifier, what you're looking up in the other table. Alright, so in this case it's ID and ID. So I'm going to click on that, so it's VLOOKUP A4. Then it's going to say, well, you want me to look up that ID in what data set or table do you want me to look up? Now I can highlight this, and you can do it that way. Actually, it automatically converted it to name. But had I just wanted, let's say, the first 3 columns, you could see that it puts in the range using the cells. Why I don't like to do that is because when you copy that, sometimes it changes the range that you're using, because when you copy things, it'll start shifting the range. So I don't like to do that. I like to use the name, and this way it will remain when I copy that formula. It's just one of those good practices to do. Hit comma. Now, so the formula says look up ID in this table, and when you find it, okay, which in this case it's right here, return me. In this case, we want to use the data in column 2. There's only one other column of data, but had them in multiple columns, the data in here would have been 3, 4, and so on. So in this case, it's going to be column 2. Another comma, and then you can see how Excel asks you, do you want this to be true or false? True being an approximate match, false being exact. 99 times out of 100, you're going to want to be an exact match. So you're just going to write false, and then close parentheses and hit enter. Okay, and you'll see that it returned Yorktown. And going back to one of the shortcut features, I'm going to use Format Painter just to have everything sort of same font and design. And I'm going to copy that formula. So what's nice is if you look as I copy down, the data underscore city did not change. Okay, so you can see that's just sort of a best practice. Let me give an example of what would have happened if we didn't name it. Okay, so let's say let's change that formula and say A4, comma. Now instead of using the name, I'm going to block the range myself to go to here. Alright, and then I'm going to say return me column 2 and only exact matches. Now it worked, right? Which it should. But as you copy it down, okay, you can see it. What happened was the range, which in the first formula was F4 to G8, now shifted to F5 to G9, F6 to G10, and by the time we got down to this line, the table range shifted so far down that it couldn't look up the data. So this is an example of why you don't want to get out of using the best practice of the name. So let's go back in here and just change that to data underscore city and copy. And there you go. So let's now do it across several data. So now I have my data in unique identifier here. I'm going to name this table, okay, and I'm going to call that demographic data underscore data. Okay, so now the way I want my output in this table is to have name, city, and date of birth. Alright, so let's write the formula equals VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up my unique identifier. I want to look in the table demographic data. Okay, I want you to return me the name is in column 1, 2, and I want exact matches. Alright, now let's do the city, which is in a different table. That's in this table. So I'm going to say VLOOKUP, my unique identifier, in the table data city, return me column 2, and exact matches false. And then lastly, one more time, VLOOKUP, key identifier. Now this is going to be in this table here, which is demographic data, double click. Now this is return me column 1, 2, 3, and false. Okay. Now, something interesting happened, which is that doesn't look like the date of birth here. That's how Excel does dates. It converts it to these numbers. All we'll have to use is the format painter to copy the formatting from there, and we'll be fine. And there you go. And while we're at it, why don't we just copy the formatting? Alright, we can copy our formulas down, and now you can see this is all formulas. Okay, these are all formulas, and if we want to also copy the same format, there we go. Oop. Let's undo that. And here we go. So now we have our data. Now these are all, like I said, these are all formulas. If you remember from the module where we did the text, where we converted formulas to text, if I want to make sure that these, which are formulas now, are now text, I want to highlight this all, hit Control Copy, which is Control C, right click, Paste Special, Values and Number Formats. Hit OK, and then as you can see when I click in after hitting Escape, everything now is a value. The formulas are no longer there. So that's using the VLOOKUP function.